Greetings and welcome. We had some technical difficulties at the beginning of our recording and we needed to re-record the start of the event. My name is Sonia Srivastava and I'll be reading what Rahila Ahmed said at the event. She serves as your Prince George's County School Board member for District 5, representing Bowie and other great areas of our county. But most importantly, she strives to represent fairness, justice, love, and peace, and we stand with you in the Stopping the Hate. At the event, Ahmed started off by talking about, "It's with a conflicting sense of honor and sorrow that I join you for the second year in a row as MC of an event focused on addressing the perpetuation of systemic racism in our society, a discrimination that's been centuries in the making and may likely take generations to correct. Today, we are here thanks to Tamika Washington and the Interfaith Coalition of Bowie to show love and stop the hate. You'll hear from officials, students, faith leaders, and community members who understand that we should not be judged or persecuted for our identities, ethnicity, race, economic status, religion, gender, sexual orientation, and instead be shown the love for our brave and resilient characters. Each of your characters have brought you here today, and for that, I thank you. During today's event, stay cool and hydrated so that we can be ready to rally in solidarity with our Asian American and Pacific Islander, or API, siblings to stop Asian hate, and our Black and Brown siblings to stop racism. Throughout our program, at any point in time, if you are feeling solidarity for what is being said, please raise your fist. I'll be raising mine in welcoming the speakers to the mic. You may join me in doing so as well. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge that we are conducting this program on stolen indigenous land. Let's please take a moment of silence to pay respect to the original Native American caretakers of the land we're on. Starting now, thank you. Folks, it's so important to understand that we are here today because injustices were done to so many people before us, and those injustices continue to do this every day. Discrimination, persecution, segregation, colonization, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, war. These aren't just our past, they are our present, and if we aren't mindful, they could be our future. We see this internationally in the Middle East and Asia and Africa and Europe. We see this nationally with police brutality, incarceration, and murder of Black people. And with the rise of violence towards API people by folks that negatively believe that APIs are responsible for this virus, this pandemic, as if our own systematic deficiencies, decision-making, pride, and ignorance weren't attributable. Folks, we've had over 6,600 reported cases of violence against members of the API community since the pandemic began. We need to stop the hate. We must demand better for our coming generations than a world full of hate, than a world complicit to hate. That means standing up to oppression when we see it. It means calling out discrimination when we hear it, and that means being unafraid of the consequences. Today, we rally for our future. Say it with me. Stop the hate. Stop the hate. Come on, y'all. I hear the cicadas louder than you. Stop the hate. Once more, stop the hate. Folks, I'd like to believe that we are a bold and courageous people, and in Bowie, we are led by a bold and courageous leader. Our opening remarks will be given by none other than our mayor of the great city of Bowie, Mr. Timothy Adams. At this point, we can continue with the video of the program. Please welcome our mayor, Adams, to the mic.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, we can do better than that. Come on, we're out here to stop the hate. Let me hear your voices. Good afternoon, everyone. All right. As you know, I'm Tim Adams, and I'm proud to be the mayor of the great city of Bowie. I thank all of you for being here today in attendance, and for those who may be watching now. I want to thank the Bowie Interfaith Coalition for putting this together, particularly Ms. Tamika Washington. But to everyone in attendance, I want to say thank you. Also to the public officials and others who have taken their time to be here today, to stand up for justice, to stand up for equality, to stand up to stop the hate. You see, far too many times we allow those who hate to sound out the voices of love. We sound out the voices of equality, to sound out the voices of justice. We have an obligation to pursue every avenue we can to stop the hate. We have to stop the hate against gender bias. We have to stop the hate against sexual orientation. We have to stop the hate against religious beliefs. We have to stop the hate because of the color of one's skin. And we have to stop the hate simply because we disagree with someone. I'm very proud today. I was able to bring my grandson out. His name is Nehemiah. And what it reminds me, and it tells me to remind you, is this isn't just about us. It's about all those coming behind us. It's about that unity and that love and making the sacrifice to have that courageous voice to step up and step out and say, enough is enough. We have to stop the hate. But we also have to make sure that each one of us take a look at ourselves and look and make sure that we too aren't fostering any of those ideals of hate. Sometimes it's easy to look outside, but we have to first look inward. I just want to say again, thank you for being here today. Thank you for showing the love, the commitment, and the courage to fight hate. And I am so very proud of this diverse community called Bowie, because we will continue to fight for justice and equality. And we will continue to fight to stop the hate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Adams. Can we put our fists up and say, stop the hate? Stop the hate. We are blessed today to have our opening prayer be led by Rabbi Steve Weisman of the Interfaith Coalition of Bowie. Rabbi Weisman is a rabbi of Temple Solel. Please prepare your hearts and minds as he comes forward to share some words of prayer and encouragement. Rabbi.
You're going to keep wiping. I'll take it off to speak so people can hear me.
We do, sir. This is going to hold.
Thank you for your service. Please join me in prayer. O God, heavenly creator of all that we see, nurturing presence and life force, moral compass, we call upon you by so many differing names, yet we recognize that you truly are one. We have so many relationships with you, each a source of blessing in itself. We who gather here today recognize that we have many reasons to give you our thanks. We created all too human, even as you made us in your image. Recognize that we are quick to call upon you with questions and doubts when we find ourselves in need and in pain, but not so quick to thank or acknowledge you when things go well for us. Teach us better to recognize your presence in our world and in our lives at all moments, to act as better shepherds of your creation. Give us strength to use our blessings for the betterment of all people and all creation. But God, we also know that not all of your children feel so blessed in this challenging moment. Help us reach out to those who do not equally share in the blessings of our society, in solidarity and in support, with compassion as true allies. Help us work with them and for them, seeking liberty and justice for all, finally learning to act as if all truly means everyone. We remember, O God, that you created all humanity from a single man and woman. Allow us now to learn fully and finally the lesson that we are all one family. No one better or worse by birth than anyone else is. Each of us descended from those into whom you breathed that breath of life, that spark of your divinity that burns inside every soul still today. As a rabbi and as a Jew, I am grateful that my ancestors had the opportunity to escape violence, economic hardship, and the systemic oppression of Eastern Europe, to find a welcoming haven here in America as the 19th century turned to the 20th. I'm also aware that those who came a little before them and a little bit after them were not so equally blessed. But that gratitude is lessened, as it must be, O God, by the awareness that as the gates of this country opened for my ancestors, the ancestors of our neighbors of Asian and Pacific Island ancestry found the doors locked to them. Those who managed to get in were often treated shamefully. Let us finally, as a nation, seek atonement for the concentration camps here in America during World War II, in which we incarcerated so many of Asian heritage out of unjustified fear and bigotry. The need to decry the rise in hate speech, injustice, and violence felt by our AAPI neighbors, friends, and family members today is not new, nor is our gathering in this place to demand justice and equality for Black people, brown people, and indigenous people. While the conviction of George Floyd's murderer was long overdue and a source of hope, give us strength and wisdom, O God, to recognize it merely as the important first step on a long and continuing march to true justice for so many Americans. Continue to grant us the patience and courage to make that march step by step, side by side, every day. In our focus today on the AAPI and BBI communities, their struggles, their rights, let us not lose sight, O God, as the mayor reminded us, of the truth that there are too many others who also need our hope and support. Women, the transgendered, those who are immigrants or would-be immigrants to our shores, religious groups continuing to need armed support to meet in peace for worship. Allow us to be free to speak of the value of each individual in every life, free to celebrate the many in our society who do their jobs every day with integrity, honesty, and fairness in their treatment of all people, rather than focusing on the relatively few bad actors instead. So God, give us strength to continue to walk on your path, wisdom and courage to speak truth to the lies, the deceits, the cover-ups, and the hidden agendas, patience to endure the long journey still ahead, compassion and vision to see and address the very real needs of so many, love to heal the hurts and wounds still so deeply felt, and faith in ourselves, in each other, and in you, O God, to trust that we are on the right path, to see the journey through until the end. I pray that each of us here today will be blessed to live long enough to see the day when we no longer need to raise our fists in solidarity saying, stop the hate, but are free to raise our arms open to each other in hugs to share the love, the respect, the peace. May it be your will, O God. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Weisman, for uplifting us today. Stop the hate. Stop the hate. And in the words of Rabbi Weisman, let's share the love. Folks, systemic change cannot occur without legislative change and without legal change. Every few years, we elect our state leaders to go to the state capitol and pass laws for the betterment of our community. Today, we are joined by our very own delegates from District 23. Delegate Geraldine Valentino-Smith, Delegate Ron Watson, and Delegate Marvin Holmes. Let's please welcome them to the mic.
Good afternoon. The gentlemen have decided to let me go first. Thank you. I'm privileged to be here with Mayor Adams, my fellow delegates, Delegate Watson, Delegate Holmes. Delegate Lily Chi is on her way. She got a little lost. She's traveled all the way from Montgomery County to speak to us on behalf of the Asian Pacific Caucus. With our mayor, our leaders of the faith community, and you, the members of our community, and those that are watching us at home. It is a privilege. I am a lifelong, proud resident of the city of Bowie. I believe our city represents the best of diverse communities in our state and in our country. And I am humbled to stand before you to acknowledge the shortcomings of our law enforcement policies for use and force and continued examples of systemic racism that took the life of George Floyd and many other men and women of color. I'm also here to help us represent Asian American Pacific Heritage Month in a time of increased threats to our Asian American community. And I'm humbled also to stand before our representatives of our Bowie Police Department and to also thank them for the work that they do here in Bowie and to help us in these difficult times. We truly need events and comings together like this gathering to highlight the ongoing struggles with misguided hate between Americans and within our communities. I'm thankful to the Interfaith Coalition members and Ms. Washington for organizing this event. And I recently had the opportunity to meet with the Interfaith Coalition. And I can attest to how our places of worship here do indeed represent the best aspirations to be a welcoming and multiracial and diverse community. When we citizens and residents of all walks of life and economic and ethnic backgrounds come together and worship together, real and sustained healing and peace can follow as we come out of our houses of worship and into our neighborhoods. Our faith communities and you here today give me hope that we can strive to be our best selves. And in ending, I just want to remind us that 3 days ago, President Biden signed the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act with a 94-1 vote. It signals to the country and the world that we can come together to discuss hate in our communities in an honest and forthright manner, and that working together we can acknowledge each other's pain and inequity and move forward to change hearts and minds in our diverse nation. We are a blessed and powerful nation. We can celebrate, but also one we must join together to improve. At the Hate Crimes Act bill signing 3 days ago, all present acknowledged the overwhelming support from both parties from across the political spectrum. So we continue to work together for transformative change in our policing, in our county and state, spurred by the horrifying and terrific death of George Floyd almost 1 year ago. Communities across Maryland can and should agree to this open dialogue and discussion as the first steps to healing, reconciliation, and unity. And so, as Vice President Kamala Harris said in signing the bill, this act will bring us one step closer to stopping hate, not just against Asian Americans, but all Americans. So in closing, let's each make this a reality in our lives and hearts. Thank you.
That's good, that's good. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me first start off by wishing our Asian American Pacific Islanders my heartfelt recognition as this month as we honor their many contributions to our community and to our nation. Their ingenuity helped build our nation, and their service and sacrifice continues today. And so why are we here today? We are here to stop the hate. So what exactly is hate? As one of your representatives on Maryland's Judiciary Committee, let me give you a definition. A verified hate crime is one that leads a reasonable and prudent person to conclude that the offender's actions were motivated in whole or in part by their bias against an individual's protected status. In Maryland, motivations of bias are tracked by race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, gender, disability, and homelessness. And in the state of Maryland, which county do you think has the highest number of verified hate crimes? Let me help you out. It's Prince George's County. And within our county, where do you think most of these events have occurred? The zip code is 20742, where the University of Maryland is located. We remember that fateful day in May 2017 on the University of Maryland's campus in College Park, where First Lieutenant Richard Collins III, visiting some friends on campus just days away from graduating from Bowie State University, was murdered. And although his assailant was charged with murder, the hate crime charge was dismissed because it didn't meet judicial standards to be classified as such. And so we had to spring into action. Along with myself, Delegates Holmes and Valentino-Smith sponsored House Bill 917, a bill to expand the definition of a hate crime. And I'm proud to say that bill became law last spring. And I also want to thank our Senator Doug Peters, who this year sponsored legislation to create a permanent scholarship in the honor of First Lieutenant Richard Collins. And our work continues. I know many of you recall the incident that occurred in New York City Central Park over the summer, where a white woman called the police on a black bird watcher, falsely claiming he was threatening her. Last year, we took up House Bill 306, which would make reporting a false statement to law enforcement a felony. Likewise, we pushed House Bill 418, a bill disallowing any symbols of hate, including swastikas, Confederate flags, and nooses, in our public schools. Both of these bills successfully passed the House, but not the Senate. And so our work around removing hate from our communities will continue. And you can count on each of us as your elected representative to continue that fight. And so we stand here today, almost 1 year after George Floyd's death in police custody. And yes, we again went to work to put forth the most progressive police reform legislation in the nation, which includes implicit bias training for all of our law enforcement officers. This was not easy, but I'm glad to have been able to work with Chief Nesky and the chiefs of police around the state and our police unions to ensure we have something in place that protects each of us equally, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender identity, or anything else that distinguishes our unique individualities. And after 4 years of having to endure some of the most extreme and toxic rhetoric from the prior resident of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, we stand here and we stand strong as one community, united against hate in any form. We must continue to stand up, speak up, and fight for a safe and inclusive environment for everyone. I appreciate being invited to take part in this important dialogue, and I thank the Interfaith Coalition of Bowie, Ms. Tamika Washington, and the Bowie diversity community for organizing this event. Bowie, thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so very much for joining us here this afternoon. I want to first off begin to thank Tamika Washington and the Bowie Interfaith Action Coalition for bringing us all together this afternoon. This is such a wonderful event for us to come together to recognize how we can, as a community, stop the hate. I am reminded by the symbol that we were asked to represent in stopping the hate by raising the fist. Because I am a lot older than my colleagues, I recall in the older days, back in 1968, for example, when Tommy Smith and John Carlos in the 1968 Olympics stood on the podium receiving their awards by raising their fist. That has always been a symbol of stopping the hate and bringing awareness to what takes place in these United States. We were also reminded just a couple of days ago about the 100th anniversary of the burning down of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That just goes to indicate that hate takes many different forms and different styles. The burning of an entire community indicates the hate that that community faced. The stabbing of a transgender woman just yesterday also indicates the form of a hate on a singular person. We have seen news reports of Asian Americans being attacked one-on-one, also a symbol of hate. I want to thank all of you again for being here this afternoon, simply to understand that all of us must participate in stopping the hate. So as indicated earlier, and as shown by the 1968 Olympians, I want to raise my fist to stop the hate. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, delegates. Folks, we are joined by another outstanding state legislator, Delegate Lily Chee of Montgomery County District 15. Delegate Chee is a member of the Maryland Legislative Asian American and Pacific Islander Caucus. Please, let's give a Prince George's welcome to Delegate Lily Chee.
Well, thank you so much for welcoming me to this great neighbor. I bring greetings to Prince George's County from Montgomery County. We are proud to stand in solidarity with all of you. My name is Lily Chee, and I proudly represent District 15 in Montgomery County, one of the most diverse communities in America. Let me take off my mask so you can hear me better. Sorry about that. I forgot I have the mask on. It was quite a trip driving over here. Believe it or not, life is coming back, and the traffic on Beltway was actually heavy. So it was a good sign. I am very proud to see such groundswell of support for Asian Americans, especially during this month, the Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. I grew up in China, and in my 30 years of living in this country, I had never seen such intense interest in learning about Asian American history and culture and our struggles. I remember many years ago when my son was still a little toddler, in a grocery store when I took him for grocery shopping. Another young boy pointed to my son and said, "Daddy, a Chinese boy." And I don't know how it made my son feel, that he was somehow less than an American, that being an American had to look certain ways or sound certain ways. And here I am trying to say I couldn't be prouder, especially this year, to see such outreach and outpouring of support, because this is how we build a stronger community, by refusing to internalize racism, by refusing to point fingers at each other, by refusing to fight for crumbs. This is how we build a stronger democracy in a country, by looking at ourselves and saying we are Americans too, no matter where we came from, which God we worship, or which language we speak. And I even went as far as telling my people, other Chinese, Korean, or Asian immigrants, to say, don't wait a generation to be Americans. You don't have to just play by the rules if the rules don't make sense. Look at me. People elected me, a name they can't even pronounce. This is what America is all about. So this country has always been living in a dichotomy. On the one hand, we are the most welcoming country where a story like mine is possible. But on the other hand, it has always had a long, ugly history of otherization and a marginalization. So I urge all of us to learn from each other, because in the super diverse multicultural community like Montgomery County, like Prince George's County, like the state of Maryland, and the United States of America, once we knock whiteness off pedestal, that it is everyone's responsibility to learn from each other. No one is immune from internalized racism, and this is how we empower ourselves. I have received a lot of messages, kind outreach from colleagues and other community members, elected officials, and say, what can we do to support you? I said, you have the answers. You can support Asian American small businesses so that they can make a living in this country and fulfill their American dreams, right? You can, if you're a council member, a state elected official, a community leader, you can advocate for equitable funding for Asian American organizations so that they can build capacity and serve their own communities in a linguistically appropriate and culturally competent manner. You can build bridges with other communities by being a convener. You can do many things to ensure that our kids are exposed from very early age to learn that we are all Americans. So I want to thank you for bringing all of us together to focus on this, and I couldn't be prouder as a Marylander. And I want to thank my great colleagues and the great delegates for their solidarity and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate G, and thank you to all of our delegates. Can we put our fists up? Stop the hate. 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 Thank you. Here in solidarity and speaking up and out against racism and wrongdoing is our very own Bowie Police Department. Please join me in welcoming Bowie Police Chief John Nesky and Bowie Deputy Police Chief Dwayne Preston.
Thank you and welcome to the event. You'll find that both Deputy Chief and I hate podiums. Sorry, stopping hate, dislike podiums. So we're kind of freelancing. So it's funny because whenever I'm invited to these things, I never know what I'm going to say. I honestly just kind of sit there and I ponder, and I try to feed off of the energy that the speakers before me have. So what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about diversity and what it means for us. And diversity is more than racial diversity. If you look at our department, we were the subject of a white paper by the Department of Justice because our makeup of the department matched our community spot on, by the number. And they came in and they asked us, how did you do it? And I was perfectly honest. I said, I don't know. It wasn't a trick. It wasn't a strategy. The beauty of us starting in 2006 is that it happened organically. And any time that you get diversity that happened organically, such as ours, it flows into the community. It flows into our interactions with the community. The other day that we had a call for service, I got an email from a resident expressing just how much they appreciated the diversity of our department, and that the officer that arrived on that call matched the family that was inside the house. Additionally, they had a second call, and the officer did not match the ethnicity in the house, but they were still treated with respect and fairness and kindness. So that brings about culture. So it's more about diversity. It's about culture as well, and how do we train our officers, and what are the philosophies of our officers. So when we talk about diversity, it's not just diversity as race, it's diversity of thought. And what do I mean by that? I mean that each one of us has individual experiences, individual life experiences, and we did not come to the spot where we are standing in the same manner. So we're not talking about diversity of principles. Our principles are solid. Our principles are one. Our mission is one. But the way we see that mission from past experiences is different. And we're able to communicate that difference inside of our department during conversations so that we approach problems in a diverse manner. And then we come up with the best possible solution from those diverse options. So we're very blessed in a number of different ways here in Bowie. And one of those is the diversity of our community, the engagement of our community, and the way that we interact with the partners, such as our Public Safety Committee, our Diversity Committee, and the input that they have into their department, because we are not the Bowie Police Department. We are their police department. And it's that ownership by the community that makes us stand out and makes us perform our functions on a daily basis in a fair and equitable manner. And when we look at, again, diversity, Deputy Chief and I have conversations all the time where we come from different viewpoints and we share those viewpoints, and it helps shape our policy and the way we move forward. And it's the absolute best way to go. So thank you again. We truly appreciate any opportunity to come out and talk to people. We truly appreciate any opportunity to interact with others, hear honest viewpoints, different viewpoints, so that we can continue that diversity of thought as we move forward into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to first thank Ms. Washington for coordinating and organizing the Stop the Hate rally and for including us in the program today to address this community. As a member of the command staff and the Deputy Chief of Police here for the last 10 years, 10 of my 31 years of experience as a police officer serving here in Prince George's County, it's humbling to stand before you and see the state of law enforcement as it stands today, because it's discouraging at times. But then I'm reminded that percentages tell the story, and that there's a very small percentage of officers that conduct themselves in such a way that brings dishonor and disgrace to the badge and the patch that we wear on a daily basis. And so I want to focus on the majority of the officers that come with the intent to serve each and every day. And all of us, me included, when we decided, I'm born and raised here in Prince George's County, where I still reside today. As our county executive always says, Prince George is proud, that is who I am. Most of us started this profession because we wanted to serve and help people. And so what I want to focus on, and I want you all to know as our community, is that members of the Bowie Police Department, we care about this community. And that's what's most important. No matter what our race is, ethnicity, gender, it doesn't matter. We care about this community and we're here to help people. One of the things I proudly talk about so often is that this police department, I would compare to any police department throughout this country and say confidently that I believe we have one of the best police departments in this country. And one thing that the chief and I talk about often is that while we have the opportunity to get up here on a stage or a podium and address you all, but that reputation is earned by the men and women that do the job every single day. They're out serving you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Many of those officers are represented over here to my right. I would like to acknowledge them for their service. As the chief mentioned earlier, we often have tough conversations amongst ourselves, and we challenge ourselves to be better. And we look to engage our community. We don't look to hide from our misses or shortcomings. The only way that we can get better is to know what those things are. So we want to hear from our community. We welcome to hear when we've done things well, as when we may not have been our best, because we're human and we're prone to making mistakes. But in order for us to be better, we have to hear from this community in order for us to improve. So we welcome the opportunity to engage with you all continually, whether it's coming out to a local community meeting, your homeowners association, any event that you're having. Just feel free to send us an email, make the request, and we'll be there. One of the other things as we continue to build this police department, I just want to let everybody know we have a crowd here and a captive audience, so I'm not going to shy away from the opportunity to tell you we're hiring. So if you want to be part of this police department and have an impact to change this community and the stigma that's on this profession, and join a bunch of officers and a bunch of civilians that care about the community in which we serve, please go to the City of Bowie website on the police department's page and put in an application. We're looking for officers that will continue to build this police department into the future. And again, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to address you all today.
Thank you, Chief and Deputy Chief. Can we put our fists up and say, stop the hate? Stop the hate. Stop the hate. All right, y'all, we're about halfway through our program at this point in time. I just want to check in and see how folks are doing. Can I get a thumbs up if you're doing okay? Can I get a fist up if you're doing okay? How about a butterfly? All right, here we go. Flying on to the second part of the program. Before we do move on to the second part of the program, there have been very many acknowledgments done already for the folks that made this possible. We have yet to acknowledge one group of individuals that have really helped to make this possible, and that is the City of Bowie staff members that are here today. So, staff members, could you please wave your hands so that we can all recognize you and thank you for being here and putting this on. Thank y'all so much. All right, y'all, we are moving on to the next segment of our program, and that is to hear from community members and student activists who care about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Coming up first is our very own Reverend Emily Holliday of Village Baptist Church and board member of the Interfaith Coalition of Bowie. Can we please welcome Reverend Holliday to the stage?
Thank you. I am grateful to be here today. And I think it's interesting that this event is happening today because in the Christian church, today is Pentecost Sunday. And Pentecost Sunday is the day that the Holy Spirit came, and we consider this to be the birthday of the Christian church. And it's really kind of a strange story because what happens is you've got all types of people gathered together in one place from all different areas who speak different languages, who've never been able to understand each other before. And then the Holy Spirit whooshes in like wind and fire. And suddenly, all these people are speaking and they can understand one another. For the very first time, people from different backgrounds and different languages are speaking in a way that they can hear. Now, I remember when I was growing up, my sister used to get so frustrated with me because she would be yelling at me for something or other, and I would say, "I'm listening to you." And she would say, "I know you're listening, but are you hearing me? Are you listening so that you can understand what I'm saying to you?" And most likely I wasn't, because I didn't really care what she had to say, because she was my sister and it didn't matter to me. But the thing that's so interesting about this Pentecost story, which I know is not all of our stories, but is that it was a day where people began to listen so that they could hear, to understand one another and create a community that began a movement. And Peter, who was the preacher that day, said that because we can hear each other, because we can understand each other, now our sons and our daughters will prophesy. And we'll begin to have visions and dream dreams and create a community that reflects who we want to be now that we understand one another. So I think movements, real movements, begin when we start to listen in order to hear. When we speak in order to tell the story that hasn't been heard before. In the past year, many of us have heard and seen hatred and racism in our country in ways that we had not understood before. And it has been a time of opening eyes and of people coming together and actually asking about Asian American culture and about racism experienced by Black and brown communities, trying to understand so that we can move as one together. Now, I'm new to Bowie. I just moved here in January of 2020, and I've spent more time in my house and on my street than really anywhere else. But I wanted to move to Bowie because first I fell in love with my church. And second, I wanted my son, who's 22 months old, taking a nap right now. I wanted my son to grow up in a diverse community because I believe that we stop the hate when we run towards one another, not when we run away from one another. And so we can dream dreams and have visions and hear and understand when we are together, because we don't understand when we're separate. And so the beauty of this event today also is that we're going to get to hear from some younger people in our community, to hear in order to understand the stories that they have to tell. And so the beauty to me of this Pentecost story as well is that our children, our sons and daughters, are the ones who get to tell us the story, are the ones who get to carry this story forward from generation to generation. And Christians aren't the only ones who have stories like these. But it's our story today because it's our Pentecost Sunday story, and because I'm a preacher, I couldn't stay away from it. So now I'm not going to speak any longer because I said it's my turn to hear and to listen. And so I'm excited to hear what these younger people have to share with us today that might bring us forward into the next generation of who Bowie can and will be as we stop the hate together.
Thank you, Reverend Holiday. Can we put our fists up? Stop the hate. Stop the hate. Stop the hate. Y'all are going to be dreaming about this tonight, aren't you? Stop the hate. All right, we now have a lineup of student leaders in here. I'm very excited, everybody. First up is Miss Chesa Filomeno, a 9th grade scholar from Eleanor Roosevelt High School and former Mikvah Soapbox Challenge winner from our county. I had the pleasure of witnessing Chesa in action, and I'm very confident she will move you all today. Chesa, please come up, join us.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chesa Filomeno, and I am proud to be Asian. I want to say that last bit one more time. I am proud to be Asian. This past year amidst pandemic has been so hard for everyone. But we are gathered here today because people are targeting us simply for being Asians. Specifically, they're targeting our parents and our grandparents, elderly Asian Americans who have most likely powered through the hardships of immigration, who have suffered through decades of alienation, who have done nothing but work for this country and for their families. These people deserve so much respect, and yet so many of our elders have been harmed, threatened, or just blaming them on starting the COVID. Anyone who lives as a minority in this country is familiar with hate speech, with racism. From microaggressions and stereotype jokes to racial slurs, as well as assault. To be Asian in America is to hear rude comments about your food, jokes about your face or eye shape, judgment on the way your family interact with each other, ridicule about the way your language sounds, and more. All of this has cultivated a culture that isolates minorities from each other. And this is all connected to the anti-Asian hate during the pandemic. They even label us as Chinese virus or Kung flu. I don't think I fully realized how much prejudice and xenophobia towards Asians exists until the pandemic began. Around March 2020, early in the pandemic, when cases were starting to grow, I was at school with a dry throat. Then I coughed. Immediately, some of my classmates stared at me in disgust, as if, as a nation, I could spontaneously catch and spread the coronavirus. All things considered, that's a pretty mild experience, but it impacted me nonetheless. I couldn't believe people who knew me would react that way. With what is going on against Asians, I have to admit that I am afraid that something will happen to me and my family, since our ethnicity is entangled with the coronavirus. This wave of panic catches me and drowns my mind with agonizing thoughts. Will we be next? We shouldn't have to shout and fight in order for other Americans to see us as their fellow citizens. We shouldn't have to defend our right to be here. But if we must, we should do it together. This country has been into a number of struggles. Blood has been shed. Lives were lost. We need to unbind ourselves from the slavery of hate and bigotry and open the portal of acceptance, understanding, and diversity. I will end my piece with a song from the movie Harriet. Kindly give me a clap. That's when I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home. Far across the river, can you hear freedom calling? Calling me to answer, gonna keep on keeping on. I can feel it in my bones. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chesa. Can we say stop the hate? Stop the hate. Stop the hate. Stop the hate. Folks, we now have a familiar and popular face from our community vigil last year. Backed by popular demand is Mr. Shalomaya Griffiths Johnson, an 8th grade scholar from Samuel Ogle Middle School. Shalomaya.
Good afternoon, City of Bowie. Thank you, Ms. Ahmed, for that warm welcome. It's always great to see you. Before I get started, I want to thank the Interfaith Coalition of Bowie for inviting me back to speak here this afternoon. Thank you, Ms. Tamika Washington. Thank you. It's great to see our esteemed City of Bowie mayor and his wife and his family. Thank you, Timothy Adams, an awesome role model, and the Honorable Sheila Tillerson Adams. Thank you for always supporting our city. Thank you for all of our state delegates, Mr. Holmes, Mrs. Valentino-Smith, Mr. Watson, and Ms. Chi. Also our city council members, Chief Nesky and Deputy Chief Preston, and of all today's speakers for using your platforms for such an important conversation. Thank you. As Ms. Rahila said, my name is Shalomaya Griffiths Johnson, and I am 13 years old. I proudly attend Samuel Ogle Middle School, and I am proud to be a resident of the great city of Bowie, here in Prince George's County. Last year, we galvanized right here on the stage. I see a lot of the same faces, and I can remember our community, our lawmakers, city and state officials. We stood right here in outrage over the killings of countless Black men and Asian Americans. who died at the hands of police. George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Philando Castile. I wish I stood here today for a different cause. We stand here today, still during the time of this COVID-19 pandemic, still dealing with the pandemic of racism and discrimination. No matter what the circumstances, no one deserves to die without a trial. We have the names to add to last year's list: Dante Wright, Jacob Blake Jr., Dayu Fang, Delana Ashley, Adam Toledo, Anthony Thompson, Makia Bryant, Michael Hughes, Andre Michaels. Every time I turn on the television, swipe up on Instagram, check my Twitter pages, another Black or Asian American has been choked or shot to death. We are being shot in our school bathrooms while Black. We are being shot while driving while Black. We are shot sleeping in our own apartments while Black. We are daring to live while Black. When will this vicious cycle end? America, have you thought about what these images do to a young Black mind? Have you thought about what it must make my generation feel? These people can be me. They can be my cousins, my brothers, my sisters, my uncles, my aunts, my mom, my dad. These people could be you. 184 Black men, women, and children have been shot and killed at the hands of the police since May 25th, 2020, which marks the murder of George Floyd. We are still marching, still holding vigils, still having rallies, crying for our loved ones, and yet no change. Masashi Kishimoto says, and I quote, "Those who do not understand true pain can never understand true peace." But I am not a threat. Critically thinking, so what is the biggest threat to the United States of America? It's not China, it's not Russia, it's not Iran, it's not ISIS, it's not North Korea, and it is not the Black man. The biggest threat to the United States of America is the treatment of its own children, its own citizens, due to racism and police brutality, justified by hundreds across the country. Ida B. Wells said, and I quote, "Those who commit the murders also write the reports. America has to change. Racism will surely lead to the self-destruction of the United States of America." Oftentimes, it feels like nothing changes except the names of the victims. When will my generation see real change? I heard attorney Ben Crump say, "No one can have a higher ground of morality." Regardless of who is wrong, the citizen or the police, no one can be above the law. We must punish for police reform. We must push for police reform. We must push for transparency, and we must push for accountability. He reminds us the precedents for Black people. We are able to overcome slavery. The precedents that we are able to overcome the Middle Passage. The precedents that we are able to overcome Reconstruction. The precedents that we are able to overcome Jim Crow. The precedents that we are able to overcome segregation. He reminds us that precedents, no matter what is thrown at us, we must overcome it. But first, we must fix the disparities in education. We must fix the disparities in wealth. We must fix the disparities in health. We must fix the disparities in incarceration. We must fix the disparities in violence. I believe if legislators use the model that was used to protect our Asian sisters and brothers that experience Asian hate and applied it to every race of people that experience these heinous crimes, there lies the solution. It is important that all communities come together and fight against racial injustices. In the Bible, I came across the scripture, Amos 5:24. And it says, "Let justice flow like a mighty river, and righteousness flow like a stream." We ought to be in this fight together, for humanity's sake. Breathe with me, City of Bowie. Breathe with me. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to speak on behalf of my generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Shalamaya. Can we please stop the hate? Stop the hate. Stop the hate. Whew. I'm feeling a little something, y'all. I hope you are too. Rounding us out for this section is the illustrious Miss Annabelle Washington, scholar at Chesapeake Math and IT Academy South. Annabelle, please come to the stage.
No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin, or his background, or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. That's a quote from Nelson Mandela. I spoke at last year's rally, and still the same stuff is happening. Different people have the same motive. The only thing different are the stereotypes, which does not make this any better. People are tired of COVID-19, which is understandable. I am too. But what is completely ridiculous are grown adults targeting Asian men, women, and children because they can't tell right from wrong or rumor from fact. Asian Americans were targeted in nearly 3,800 hate incidents from the past year. People who aren't doing their research on what is causing this pandemic are basing it on what their next door neighbor's cousin's best friend said and not on the actual facts. And sadly, Asian American lives are being taken from it. And if we, as African Americans, are being really honest, there's an unsaid animosity between us and Asian Americans. And a lot of that animosity is also fueled by stereotypes. Many of you may or may not know this, but on March 16, 1991, a 15-year-old African-American girl, Latasha Harlins, was murdered by a Korean-American convenience store owner who was only sentenced to probation. That incident was a painful flashpoint between our two communities and continues to impact our shared generational distrust. Some Asians think that African-Americans are loud, troublemakers, and thieves. And some African Americans think that Asians are rude, disrespectful, and their nair and hair salons are always in our community, taking our black dollars but not investing in our communities. And now the stereotypes African Americans have of Asians, which are based on our limited experiences with them, lead us to feel some type of way. Some African Americans feel like Asian Americans don't show up for us, so now that Asian Americans are the ones being targeted, assaulted, and discriminated against heavily than ever, we feel it is not our problem or not our issue. Does that sound familiar to you? Because it does to me. There were some white people who didn't want to help African Americans during the BLM protests or the Civil Rights Movement because even though white people brought our ancestors to America, our ongoing struggles aren't their problem. Don't you see what's happening? They are pitting us minorities against each other for the benefit of themselves, to maintain power. But we can fight against it if we hold ourselves accountable. Not just black people, but Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, the Latinx community, and our white allies. We can fight against it if we work together. Stereotypes don't benefit anyone, and despite all the distressing things that are happening, there's something that made this year a little bit better. Justice was served for George Floyd. It was a very bittersweet moment, and it doesn't bring Mr. Floyd back, but it was a small step in the right direction. Now I want us as a community to hold each other accountable. What are each of us doing to help? Because it doesn't just start with you or me, it starts with us, all of us. As I close, I'm going to leave you with a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In the end, remember not the words of our enemies, but the silences of our friends. Thank you.
Y'all, before we move forward, I do want to ask if there's Jennifer Lee is in the audience. If so, Jennifer, please make your way up to the stage. Jennifer. All right, y'all. I want to take a moment to just acknowledge what has just happened. Our young scholars have spoken so much truth. They have said the things that I think our generations have feared to say for years and years. And I want to ask if we can just for a moment go absolutely wild for them and what they've just said. Chesa, Shalamaya, and Annabelle, you all are so dynamic, and you've given us so much hope and gratitude today. I wish for you peace and joy beyond measure, and that the words that you've said here stick in the hearts and minds of people for days, weeks, months, and years to come. At this point in time, we are going to still our minds and listen to our inner voices as we welcome Rahma Abdul Alim, who is the executive director of Karama, Muslim Women Lawyers for Human Rights, to lead us in a moment of silence. Rahma, please.
Good afternoon. Everybody else has been thanking Ms. Washington. I am not going to thank her. I wish I was before all the students because it's so hard to follow such dynamic students. It is so important that the youth lead the way. The youth have always been our future, and we need to really focus on how they are responding to this crisis. As people from older generations, we're so concerned about ourselves, but we really must think about how this crisis is affecting our children. I'm a proud African-American Muslim woman, and I focus on my faith when I'm thinking about what's happening around our country today. In my holy book, chapter 49, verse 13, there's a part of it that's so important that I think is so important to share with you today. We have made you from a single male and female into tribes and countries so that you may know each other, not so you can despise one another. It is so important that we get to know each other as neighbors, as humans, because guess what? We all bleed red. We are all humans. And we focus on that 1% that makes us different into different races instead of the 99% that make us all human and exactly the same. So in this moment of silence, I want you to think of not just yourself, not just your family, but your neighbors and the people you don't know and how this has affected them this year. So please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sister Rahma. Y'all, let's stop the hate. Stop the hate. Stop the hate. Stop the hate. All right, y'all. At this time, we're going to be entering into our closing remarks. And those closing remarks will be offered by none other than our at-large Bowie City Councilwoman, Miss Ingrid Harrison. Please, let's give a resounding applause for Miss Harrison as she comes to the stage.
Good afternoon. This has been such an inspiring event. And I first want to start by thanking those who brought us together, Tamika and the Interfaith Coalition of Bowie. They're doing something. They are bringing people together to bring about change. They brought us all together today to stand united as a city, the city of Bowie, against hate and the brutal crimes against all people of color, Asian Americans, and the LGBT community. I take this opportunity to again thank all of the inspiring people in this community, our elected leaders, who participated on the program today. Thank you for your actions and words that counteract hate and help to bring about tolerance, love, and unity. Thank you to everyone here today who braved the heat and sat and listened. We appreciate you. And I couldn't let it go without saying thank you to the awesome City of Bowie staff. I was especially moved by the words of our young people. I am personally proud of your eloquence and the depth of love in your words. Please embody the spirit of this day and educate your peers on the impact of hate and the causes of intolerance. As a parent, I understand, and I want to extend a huge thank you to the parents here and the parents of these young people and all of you for teaching the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. As I close, there should be no event that you attend without takeaways or action items to implement in your home, neighborhood, and community. You have heard many of those today, but here are 3 points I want you to remember. Number 1, continue to make positive statements about others in your home. Remember that very young children don't recognize color or differences until it is pointed out to them. Recognize that content is greater than skin color, and examine the social media and television shows you and your children watch. Love starts at home. 2, do something. Counteract hate with acts of goodness. Rally against hate in your neighborhood. Speak to your neighbors. Say hello. Collaborate. Stand together. Be a partner with our police department. And if you see something, say something. Love starts in your community. Number 3, continue to put pressure on your elected officials. We must take an active role in the fight against hate and heal the community. We must walk the talk and develop policies and support legislation against hate crimes. I stand with you in support of rallies, church groups, community meetings, and every solution that will help eradicate the hate that is hurting so many. Love starts in our places of worship and in the halls of governance. In the immortal words of Maya Angelou, I am grateful to have been loved and to be loved now and to be able to love because love liberates. Stop the hate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harrison. Can we say it again? Stop the hate. 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 Well, folks, Bowie, we're here. It's the end. It's my wish that this rally has brought us all emotionally and spiritually closer together, and that we've been able to find peace and hope in our time of unity. Thank you all for allowing me to serve as your MC this afternoon, and please keep me in prayer as I will for you. We will now be led in our closing prayer by Reverend Chris Deacon of United Parish of Bowie and board member of the Interfaith Coalition of Bowie. Reverend.
Let us pray. Lord, help us wallow in our discomfort. You are the source of human dignity, and it is your image in which we are created. Pour out on us the spirit of love and compassion. Enable us to see reverence in each person, to reach out to anyone in need, to value and appreciate those who differ from us, to share the resources of our nation, to receive the gifts offered to us by people from other cultures. Grant that we may always promote the justice and acceptance that ensures lasting peace and racial harmony. Lord, help us wallow in our discomfort and grant us a vision of your world as your love would have it. A world where the weak are protected and none go hungry or poor. A world where the riches of creation are shared and everyone can enjoy them. A world where different races and cultures live in harmony and mutual respect. A world where peace is built with justice and justice guided by love. Lord, help us wallow in our discomfort. Help us stew in our unease. Help us sit in our disquiet. How are we people for and with others? Help us to open our eyes as we look at ourselves. Help us acknowledge our history. What have we done to exclude, to persecute, to silence? How have we been complicit? Forgive us for not being there, for not doing enough. How can we invite, empower, and lift up other voices? We need to do better. We need to move now. We need to invite to our tables. Help us go to the margins. Let us stand with the lonely, the sick, the persecuted, those who've been violated. Let us sit with them in our own unease. Help us listen to these voices. Help us reflect. Help us prayerfully act. Help us rise not to erase our discomfort, but to be fully present, seeking solidarity and seeking repentance. Lord, help me wallow in my discomfort. As I go from this place, help me to remember that I am not Derek Chauvin. So few of us are. But too often I am one of his fellow officers standing there not doing anything, worried about my status, my safety, my privilege, without considering the harm that my inaction does to my brothers and sisters, or worse, not caring. Forgive me the harm I've done by my actions, and especially the harm I've done by my inaction. Lord, help us to wallow in our discomfort. As today is the Christian day of Pentecost, the day when the Holy Spirit descended upon the disciples, we ask that you send a spirit on those who have gathered here. We ask that you send a spirit of love, that you send a spirit of wisdom, that you send a spirit of mercy, a spirit of equity, a spirit of reconciliation, a spirit of repentance, and above all, a spirit of justice. Help us walk together until that day when justice rolls down like water and righteous like an ever-flowing stream. Amen.
Thank you, Bowie. This concludes our program. Thank you all so much for being here. And one more time, or maybe like 5 more times, stop the hate. Stop the hate. Stop the hate. Stop the hate. Was that 5 times? One more time. Stop the hate. Thank you all so much. Have a good day.